is up, YouTube? This is your host, Rainy B, bringing you that homicidal tea. And today, we're serving up some Dog Day Afternoon Blend tea. Now, for anyone here that's new, I'm a dog nut, like clinical, like it's bad, real bad, totally obsessed. All it takes to make me grin is to say, look, a dog. Instant grin. Today's case features a man who was very close to his pup, so I instantly related to him. But before we dive in, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give this video an old-fashioned like. In fact, bat around that little like button like a putt swats at a tennis ball. See? Grin inciting animal for me. Anyway, it never fails. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the case today. The canine-assisted case of John Helble. John Helble was said to be a bit of a hermit. He was quite the homebody. He enjoyed spending time with his close buddies as well as dismantling and modifying firearms. He was really good at it too. He was quite the firearm smith, gunsmith. That's what it is. Around the house, he maintained a sizable arsenal of weaponry. He was always tinkering, with armory and chilling at the house, and he was always with his best friend by his side, his little husky pup named Keisha. In February 1999, John's mother, Margaret Helble, called the North Liberty, Iowa Police Department as she had been attempting to contact her son for about 2 months but had received no response. When the patrolmen arrived at John's trailer, they had knocked on the door and there was no answer. But in the driveway, John's van was there, and that indicated his presence. So as the police remained outside to orchestrate their next steps, an odor that they instantly recognized hit them, the odor of death. That was the indicator that gave them the needed probable cause to enter the property, and the cops decided it was time to go inside. John was discovered dead on the sofa. He seemingly looked like he had just dozed off in front of the TV. However, the little 2 wounds in the back of his head told a different story. They could tell by the tiny holes that it was most likely a .22 caliber pistol that had been used to shoot him twice in the back of the head. His body was in advanced decomposition, indicating that he had been shot several weeks prior to them discovering him. Upon inspection of the crime scene, there were no traces of forced entry. All of the doors and the windows, they were locked shut, everything. The investigators found marijuana and other drug paraphernalia, not much. John's mother had explained to the dispatcher that John had an extensive weapons collection. But when the detectives looked around for weapons, no, nothing. They couldn't find anything. They couldn't locate any of his firearms. Crazy. They were also told about Keisha, and they couldn't locate her either. Thankfully, a news outlet reported that Keisha had possibly been located, albeit in a strange location. A dog matching Keisha's description had been seen wandering around several miles away from John's trailer. Keisha was positively identified by John's parents, and despite the cold and muddy weather, Keisha was spotless. And this is a husky. Long hair, Iowa winter. She did not appear that she had been off fending for herself in the rural area which she was found in. This pointed authorities in the direction to think that whoever killed John had taken Keisha and then abandoned her into that area. A red herring, perhaps?
Hold up.
ADHD moment.
Hold up. Hey.
Now, for those of you who might be wondering what a red herring is, Wikipedia answers that question. It defines it as a red herring is something that misleads or distracts from the relevant or important question. It may be either a logical fallacy or a literary device that leads readers or audiences toward a false conclusion. This term, it was popularized in 1807, a little while ago, by English debate enthusiast William Cobbett. And he actually told the story about how he used to use the strong-smelling smoked fish, the red herring, to divert and distract hounds from chasing a rabbit. Who knew? Well, now you knew! Anyway, I reached out to a fellow awesome YouTuber in the margins to cover this subject. He has a way of making history so friggin' interesting. I hate history. Can't stand it. Almost lost my scholarship with it. I cannot. The thought of listen, puke, puke, puke. That's not learning to me, so I rebel against it. Anyway, if he had taught history, dude, I would have been a history major. It's awesome. So hopefully he'll post this, and if he does, I'll update it here, and I'll link to his, I'll update There's a card for him. And then I'll also leave his channel description, a link to it in the description box. Let's get back to the case. An ADHD moment.
So we don't play.
Now, like I said, Keisha was wandering miles away, and a new wrench had been thrown in was the fact that the time of death was now an issue. The medical examiner could not pinpoint the exact time of death for John, but using corroborating evidence that they had estimated to be around January 22nd, 23rd. That's when the voicemails started piling up and his calls weren't being returned. The relatives and friends of John were interrogated first, as expected. You always question the inner circle first. And the suspicions were eventually narrowed down to 3 individuals, all of whom were John's supposed friends. Mike Harding was the first person suspected. Mike and John were allegedly partners in a small narcotics operation. Around the time of the murder, a witness saw Mike's truck parked at John's trailer. Mike was interrogated, however, he was quickly eliminated, and, since he had a pretty good alibi, and he passed a polygraph examination. Andrew Rich and his girlfriend Sharon Schneider were the next 2 suspects to be looked into. Andrew was said to last be seen on January 18th with John, and when Andrew and Sharon left to return to their home in Crable, Wyoming, he informed authorities that he had actually been to John's trailer and he was still alive when he left. This was all the probable cause that they needed to issue a search warrant for their house. You see, their stories didn't match up with other witnesses. Let's go ahead and take a look what's going on inside. Well, the residence of Andrew and Sharon, it was searched, and they found weed, they found meth. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, so if I bleeped it out, it's a green thing, and it's a synthetic thing that is also known to chill beverages. Yeah. Anyway, if you can't figure that out, then you don't know what I'm talking about, and that's probably good because you probably led a much more innocent life than I have. Anyway, back to the story. They found that and the .22 caliber bullets, then they were discovered inside the home. Now, a neutron activation test was conducted on these bullets at an FBI lab. The metal was melted down once the lead was shaved, and the atoms were actually counted. And the bullets were discovered to be completely different. So they didn't find the same ones that were on the crime scene. Now, smudge markings on the windows of Andrew's car were consistent with smudge markings from an animal pressing its nose against the glass. Now, I'm not going to do an ADHD moment because it's going to be quick. But side note, when I see a car that has that, that's enough to even make me grin because I see that and I'm like, oh, somebody has a puppy. I'm really obsessed. I mean, like it's bad. But anyway. Back to the story. According to the police, though, and this is hilarious, I never heard of this being done before, Keisha's nose was fingerprinted in an attempt to match it to the window smudges, but the test came up inconclusive. How cool would that have been? Anyway, the police had run out of leads, and the investigation had become dangerously close to getting cold. Keisha was once again the focus of the cops' attention since she was actually there. They also still suspected Andrew Rich of being involved, but they lacked evidence to tie him to the crime scene. Andrew's ambition in life, according to Sharon and other associates, was to be a mafia hitman. Yeah, I have high aspirations. Give me a break. He portrayed himself as this really dangerous guy throughout his life. He's just really cool and really mean and so scary. Well, it spilled into all facets of his old, wonderful life, and his relationships were volatile, and Andrew had purportedly abused and manipulated Sharon pretty bad, according to her statements to police. In pressing Sharon, authorities finally talked her into coming clean. They convinced her that they already suspected she was concealing something. So 3 days before the murder, Sharon acknowledged to dropping Andrew off at John's house, and after that, she drove an hour to her daughter's residence. Andrew drove up to see her a few days later in John's van to pick her up. Now, Andrew drove them back to John's house to drop off the van, but also to load all of John's guns into their car. When they finished loading everything into their car, they drove home to Wyoming. And that's when, according to Sharon, Andrew left the next morning at about 4 a.m., headed for Texas. And he stayed there about 3 weeks. Now, authorities questioned the people that Andrew supposedly stayed with in Texas. They told police that he had sold them a Gold Cup semi-automatic weapon to settle a drug debt, according to the first man they talked to. Now, John had restored this gun, which was a valued item of his. It was one of his, pride and joys. The gun was taken into custody and was made a part of evidence against Andrew. Also relinquished was a box of ammo that was sold in Texas to a different man. Now, according to the police report, several short black and white hairs were recovered inside the package by the cops. Now, although a mitochondrial DNA test couldn't be distinctive as a blood or a DNA sample, animal DNA expert Joy Halverson believes that she could compare the samples, and the hairs were tested using PCR, polymerase chain reaction. Does that sound familiar? PCR is the more sensitive COVID test. Cool. Science, COVID, it's all coming together. Anyway, a sample of Keisha's hair was compared to the hair found in the ammunition box. It was discovered to be a haplotype, which means extremely unusual. It occurs only 1 out of 300 dogs. The individual who had surrendered the gold-cut pistol to the police also admitted to having a gun box as well. Now, being such a meticulous gun enthusiast, prior to his death, when he had worked on this gun, John had documented all the changes he'd made to the firearm, as well as the fees that he'd charged. Now, a handwriting comparison, because it was all handwritten, a handwriting comparison was performed, and it was discovered that John's handwriting samples matched the handwriting on the fee and the modification sheet in the gun box. Boom. Police felt they finally had enough supporting evidence to issue a murder warrant for John's killer, Andrew Rich. He was apprehended and charged with a crime. Now, Andrew confessed to killing John. He said he murdered him for his gun collection the day before the trial started. He said John was one of his closest friends, even though he didn't show any remorse for his actions. He also admitted that robbery in the first degree and voluntary manslaughter, those were the things that he was guilty of. For the robbery, he received 25 years, and for the voluntary manslaughter, he received 10 years. How is that justice? I mean, seriously. And I'm sure they're running concurrent. Anyway, the justices are just, it grates my nerves. How is that voluntary manslaughter? I mean, how is it not first degree? Like, he planned this crap. He made a concerted effort to take his little lady friend away from the scene of the crime so that the deed could be done, he could come back. That's planning. That's premeditation. That's first degree all day death penalty. Homicidal T supported capital punishment pursuing crimes up in this house, right? I mean, they did John all sorts of wrong in my opinion. But again, this ain't about me. Sharon didn't get to skate off into the sunset scot-free, though. I mean, for her part, and in exchange for her testimony, she was sentenced to 6 years in a halfway house for drug possession and 2 years probation following that. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, seriously. I mean, Keisha played such an intrinsic role in this case's resolution. John totally loved her to pieces. And she got to return the favor by locking up the people that took her buddy away. Andrew, what a jerk. I mean, seriously, he deserves a lot more time than that. Well, you know what I think. Anyway, time ain't even enough. Give that old Sparky chair a charge and set him up. Time to roast this worthless piece of trash. You guys know how much I support that old capital punishment. But anyway, again, this ain't about me. Honestly, I don't think Sharon was that involved. I mean, I sure hope that she wasn't. But you know what I also hope for? I hope that probation in the halfway house did her good and help her rid her of her demons and quit those drugs for good. Because with dope, there's no hope. Well, that's it for this case on Homicidal 2. Thank you so much for watching. This isn't a very long one again, and it's definitely not a heavy hitter like Steven Stainer. Ooh. I know, and you guys are going to be like, okay, can you stop talking about it? We get it. It was sad. It's still so sad in my brain. Anyway, but it's over. So I wanted to cover Corey's case, but it's not time yet. Anyway, I got some other ones. I must try to look for more cases where dogs help them and everything, because I just love dogs so much. Anyway, it's so much more than people. There's got to be something wrong with that.
You are insane. No, you're insane.
Well, that is it for this case. I hope you liked it. I love animal-assisted cases. To think that these little gifts from beyond help us so much through so much pain and suffering. And they're also there to celebrate with us and guide us throughout different seasons of our lives. I mean, and to think that they can even help us after death that's so cool to think about. I mean, I don't know where Keisha is now. I mean, I don't know where she ended up on Earth after the trial, but it's been a while. So I know that now that she's up there with her buddy and they're chasing balls and just being good energy as they've always been. And John's family, I'm sure, is still grateful for your faithfulness, little pup. Good girl. See you guys in the next video. Until then, bye.